to Rock City 101.9 FM. Today, the 12th of July 2017. Like I hinted earlier this morning, we'll be bringing our searchlight once again on the relationship between the executive arm of government and, of course, the legislative arm of government. This actually should be two arms of government that should be working together for the common good, for the betterment of Nigeria. And of course, Nigerians, even though they may have some kind of check and balance functions or responsibility over each other, it has always come as an issue of contention as regards the limit of the powers of the Senate or the National Assembly as a whole when it comes to what they should do or what they should not do. And of course, the role of the executive, what they should do and what they should not do. If you look at the issue of the budget, for example, the presidency, the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, to be precise, attacked the Senate and, of course, the National Assembly for mutilating budget estimate of his ministry, which affected the key critical project. Talking about infrastructural projects, not only the Lagos-Calabar rail line, but also the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway project and the second Niger bridge, which generated a whole lot of brouhaha. Away from that, you also had senators renewing the attack, and of course their stance on Magu. Because they believe that Magu should not continue to act as the SFC chairman because they've rejected his nomination by the presidency, a record thought 3 times. Now, the presidency is saying that it is Magu or nobody else. The position of the acting president is also aligned with that of the president, Muhammadu Buhari, that it is Magu or nobody else, and that's created a new strange relationship the Nigerians thought had been resolved before the president embarked on his recent medical vacation to the UK on May 8. Well, here we are. A kite, as some have said, was flown on the floor of the Senate recently when some of the senators raised a point of order saying that if the acting president refuse to sack Magu or let Magu go as they have decided, and then they might even go for the acting president's seat. Some hinted on impeachment. Some said that it is going to be no confirmation of any nominee of the presidency, suspended all confirmations of nominees from the presidency. Senator Marafa and Badibe even raised a point of order saying that the president and the acting president are not in the country, and so the Senate president should assert himself as the acting president, and so to carry out many of these responsibilities or functions, as it were. When you look at all this, what exactly is happening? What does it portend for our democracy? Aghemerio.
All right, indeed. What does it portend, for our democracy? This has been running for the past 18 years.
Yes.
All right, uninterrupted, and this is what some will, regard as the longest since independence.
Yes.
So, in a actual sense of it, it's how we are progressing. But when we look at the way these hitches are coming in, can we truly say that this is healthy enough for democracy? This is one of the questions.
Especially when Nigeria is gradually getting out of recession. When all arms of government should be working together to actually make sure the economy really heals and Nigerians have a fair deal on their hands.
All right. If we have to look at it on the other side, some believe that it's actually a kind of a check and balance, and that the legislative arm of government is standing on its
On its
own,
own.
actually
Principle of
exercising its
separation of
power.
powers.
Yes, principle of separation of power, and that is what we're experiencing at the moment. But then we should also look at these, truly, the intentions behind all of these misunderstandings and face-off that we're experiencing in our democracy as it stands. But truly, how healthy is this?
Well, that is what we're looking at this morning. This has raised a whole lot of questions once again about what we need to do really to actually get out of this present quagmire that we find ourselves as a people and as a nation, especially when Nigerians are clamoring for restructuring. Are we beaming a searchlight on the National Assembly? If we are talking about restructuring, how are we going to restructure that particular arm of government to make it more responsible, make it more responsive, and make it more effective? Of course, before now, some have talked about looking at a unicameral legislature, whereby it's either the Senate goes or the House of Rep goes. You just have a few representatives that will be there. It will be just one particular chamber, but it will be working for the common and greater good of the people. So many options have been pushed forward. We'll be looking at all this this morning. We have someone very qualified to look at this from a federal lawmaker, and of course a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, APC, who has almost seen it all when it comes to politics. Has been here right from the inception of this democracy as a party chieftain. I'm talking of no one else but the Bobagua of Aghemerio, Honourable Chief Bode Mustapha. You're welcome once again.
Yes, thanks for having me, Tobi.
Chief Bode Mustapha, a lot has been said, side comments, permutations, insinuations about what really transpired on the floor of the Senate when they rejected the nomination of the DG of the National Lottery Commission on the grounds that the acting president has said, well, we don't need your confirmation of none of our nominees. And so it's either you take that back or you kick Margot out or we block or frustrate everything that you want to. What does this portend?
Well, to start off with, thank you very much. You see, to start off with, this is the first time that I'm seeing a Senate that is peopled by people who have one criminal matter or the other hanging on their necks. And as such, of course, Magu is a wrong client as far as they are concerned to be chairman of EFCC. I mean, I was fortunate to have been a member of the National Assembly from 1999 to 2003 at the inception of this republic and this democracy. And I don't think it has ever been this bad, because I remember that when our first speaker, Salisu Ibrahim, got entangled in certificate problems, he had no choice than to weep on the floor of the House and resign as Speaker. Now you have today a sitting Senate President who is embroiled in so much of controversy. You can count how many former governors have got EFCC cases in the Senate. You can count former ministers who have EFCC cases, who have cases with the EFCC bordering on corruption. And of course, if there is somebody as thorough as Magu, because if you look at Magu's credentials, he has a very, very rich credential when it comes to fighting corruption. I mean, this guy read accounting, then he read law, then he read forensic accounting. So, and he has been part of EFCC from the word go. And so is a bad customer for them. But we did not vote for people to go to the National Assembly only to further their own nest. Only because you can see that anything they are trying to do there is only self-serving. And that's why I've always said that we do not need, having been in the National Assembly, I believe and I stand to be convinced that this country needs anything more than parliamentary system of governance. Because what the executive system of governance is costing this country is just too much. And that's why it's become a do or die affair. But having said that, I believe that the Senate has a hidden agenda for wanting to blackmail the executive or twist the arms of the executive behind their back on the Magu issue. Every other thing they're saying is just hearsay. The main target is Magu.
Okay, now what do you think is responsible for this, apart from the issue of they have corruption cases? Could this, some have said, it could be connected to the appeal by the federal government against the ruling of the CCT on the corruption trial?
Of course,
of Senate President.
You don't need a soothsayer to know that. You don't need a soothsayer to know that. I mean, to appreciate that. It doesn't take rock science to know that that is the whole issue. That's it. All they want to do, you see, unfortunately, for the first time we have a person who is an anti-corruption president, who is ready to fight corruption with his life. And we now have the man, and they are ready to frustrate him. And then you have a bunch of people who think that they are above the people who have elected them. They were voted to serve and not to lord it over us. That if the executive believes that it has a case and believes that, okay, the judiciary is the last hope of the common man, and I put that in quotes because now we have seen situations where you can talk about the judiciary itself being, in quotes, having certain skeletons in their cupboard. But be that as it may, it's still the last hope of the common man. Now, if the executive believes that, okay, we want to take this to a logical end, why fight them because of that? Because that's what it's all about. Everybody knows that.
All right, now looking at this face-off between these two arms of government, can we truly say that our constitution is still being regarded?
Well, you see, again, you have several lawyers. What I've noted about lawyers is that if you invite a lawyer to handle a case for you today about this paper being stolen to defend you, he will defend you. If tomorrow the government invites him to prosecute you about stealing the same paper, he will come and prosecute. Because that's why they say the law is an ass. Because if that's not the case, they will not have lawyers who are interpreting the Constitution to suit their own whims and caprices. We are not lawyers, we are laymen, but we also know that a person, for example, who is alleged to have taken money from his state, to have bought properties, to have made anticipated declaration of properties before he even got into office, it doesn't need a soothsayer to tell you that this is not totally correct. So, but if they will have lawyers who are telling them you're doing the right thing, the executive will have lawyers who are saying you are doing the right thing. So it's putting, like you said, madam, putting the constitution to test.
Well, then going back in history, Nigeria's had its own share of political upheaval. Now, the First Republic did not last for long. Soon after independence, due to lack of tolerance among politicians and their unwillingness to abide by the rule of law and the fair play in government, political instability engulfed the country. Are we not treading the path at this point of a political dispensation?
We are not the people treading that path. It's those 109 senators and 360 House of Rep members that are treading that path.
Well, they're representing us in there.
Yeah, but they've forgotten that they're representing us. How many of them have come back home, to call for referenda, to seek our opinion? They just sit down there and do what they like. I mean, look, if you look at democracy in civilized society or civilized clime, people go back and how do you put it, confer with the electorate, the people who have voted them in, to say, this is going on, what do you want me to do? How many people have called us into cultural center or called us into whatever and say, this and this is happening, what are your thoughts? They just go there and they do what they like. And to me, I have always been an advocate of bicameral governance in this country. One, the chief executive system of governance is too expensive. You have how many ministers, they have how many aides. If you have bicameral, if you have the parliamentary system of governance, first of all, to qualify to be a minister, you'll have been voted for. If you're a minister, the day you are dropped as minister, you become a backbencher. You see how much Nigeria will save? That's number one. Number two, you will not have all the powers vested in any individual or certain individuals. Because I think our legislators are beginning now to take us for a ride, and unfortunately, they are walking the path of, or treading the path of bringing this democracy into jeopardy.
Do we learn from history? Are we true students of history?
No, we're not. It doesn't seem to be.
Okay, now, Bode Mustapha, let us look at the real intent of Senator Marafa and Abaribe's claim of prodding of Saraki to act as president in the absence of the acting president and the substantive president. What do you read to all that?
Of course, it was flying. They were trying to fly a kite. When they say somebody has to act, it is the Constitution is very specific as to under what circumstances. Not that because the president just flies out, the acting president flies out to OAU conference, it's enough to say come and act. You act. I mean, does it mean that when Donald Trump came to Europe for one thing or the other, he had to say, is Vice Pence you act for him? No. Governance is going. I mean, we have a Federal Executive Council, we have ministers that are running the government. You only transmit when you are going on holidays or when you are going for medical treatment. The Constitution is very, very, very clear. If you're going on vacation, you transmit to the National Assembly to say, I am going on vacation, my vice will act for me. But you see, they wanted to test waters and see the reaction of Nigerians. But they also saw that Nigerians didn't take it lightly with them. And unfortunately for them, the acting president came back unannounced. So by the time they were testing waters, the man was back at his seat. And that's the only reason they could not, I'm sure, that's the reason why they said the acting president is just going to see Buhari again for 1 hour and rush him back. And it shouldn't be that way. We are being held by the balls by these lawmakers.
But isn't it worrisome that lawmakers who should know the Constitution like the palm of their hand, who should know the laws of the land more than anybody else, don't know these things? Is it that these senators, Senator Marafa and Abaribe, do not know when the Senate President will step up into that capacity as acting president?
They know. They know. They're only pretending not to know. I mean, the only time it can ever happen, God forbid bad thing, is if the president is ill or is dead and the vice president is also dead or is critically ill. That's the only time an acting president, a Senate president can be an acting president. They know. All they're doing is looking for protection for themselves.
When you talk about protection for themselves, what are you really?
I mean, look, I said it at the onset. There's a first Senate that I can see, I've seen or I've experienced in my 67 years on earth, where you have more than 20, 30, 40 people having corruption cases hanging on their heads. I don't want to mention names, but you will all know. And so they're the henchmen of the Senate president, who himself has these things hanging on his head. So, what are we talking about?
But some are still of the thought and believe that this is actually principle of separation of powers taking, truly taking its course. Because now it seems the legislative arm of government is no longer answerable to the executive arm of government. What do you think about that?
Nobody is saying that one arm of government should be answerable to the other arm of government. What we are trying to say is, why are you going into territories that's not yours? Because they are ready. Why do they want a person from the legislative arm to now go to the executive to go and act? It's the legislatures that are now trying to mix issues up.
No, your position seems to align with that of the chairman of PACAD, that's the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Professor Sage, who believes that the legislative arm of government or the lawmakers are trying to perform the role of the executive and the legislature.
Yes. Because if they're now saying we want one of our own to now become acting president, what does that tell you? It means we want one of our own to now become the executive.
Right.
Now, how do we go from here? How do we resolve this? Because definitely, if you, for example, the appreciable impact that this government has made on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, despite years of neglect and thousands of deaths that has occurred on that particular road. Now it seems as if that is going to be frustrated by the mutilation of the power works and housing ministry budget. You also have Second Niger Bridge, which is very, very dear to our Igbo brothers and sisters in the southeast. That has also been hampered. When you look at all
and then
this,
you have the Mokwa Bridge.
I have the Mokwa Bridge, the Jeba Mokwa Bridge. But when you look at all this critical infrastructural projects being frustrated by the same people who are supposed to protect the interests of these people and constituents in those areas, how do you feel?
Well, to me, it's because they have lost touch with their constituents. They don't care about the constituents. Because the major seaport in Nigeria is in Lagos. To move goods and people to the east or to the north, and that's why this state is called the Gateway State, you have to go through the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Now, they were talking of concessioning. This had been tried. There was nobody who was ready to fund by Courtney many years ago. Now, this government has now made provision for it. Now, secondly, sometimes people forget one thing, that appropriation is anticipatory of certain things. I'm expecting to make so much. The only arm of government that knows how much comes in or will come in or may come in is the executive. And it has appropriated. And if you now if you now, I mean, it's laughable. If you reduce what you need on Jeba Mokwa Bridge or the Second Niger Bridge or Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and you put in there rural roads or put in there boreholes and healthcare centers, it makes mockery of the whole thing. But the executive has one way out, and the way out is via environment. Once all these funds have been approved and signed, the executive can veer these funds back into the areas that they are needed, critical to the economy.
In the first instance, why should the legislative arm do this? If they know that one argument that came out was that some other sections of the country who are protected in the Senate by these lawmakers or by the senators or by the House of Rep members of the opinion that there is a bit of over concentration of critical road infrastructure projects in the southwest. Do you agree with that?
No, I do not agree with that. Because, and the reason I do not agree with that, the second Eastern Bridge or whatever you call it in the southeast is not in the southwest. The Jeba Mokwa Bridge is not in the southwest. And interestingly, the Constitution says that every state will have a member in the Federal Executive Council, and so which means that these budgets, this appropriation, before they were even taken to the National Assembly have been looked at and approved by FEC, in which every state of the Federation is represented. And if there is supposed to have been any lopsidedness, it should have been ironed out at the legislative, at the Federal Executive Council level. So all of that is, to me, is just balderdash.
Now, what do you make of the recall process going on in Kogi State? Constituents of Kogi West are trying to recall Senator Dino Melai.
Well, you mean the Ajeku Yanioja person? I mean, I'm sorry. Well, I mean, one, it's democracy at war. The people, it is claimed, are trying to recall him. If he believes that there is nothing in the recall, it's only dead people that were signing the recall, why rush to court? You will not need to rush to court if you know that it's only the forged signatures and there were dead people. But I can tell you, because I was in Lokoja during that period, and I saw people lining up. Whether they were prompted is another thing. But to say majority of them are dead people is crap. And it's democracy at best. Now, the court has said maintain the status quo ante. What does that mean? Status quo how? Is it that until we give a proper ruling, continue with the recall process? Because certain reliefs were sought and those reliefs were not granted. And if those reliefs were not granted, then I don't see any reason why NEC should not continue.
And it has continued. Yeah, they've announced the dates for the verification.
Yes. Yes.
Do you see this? Okay.
Now, okay, ask that question because this is going to take us away from.
Okay, do you see this recall process? If peradventure it succeeds that the people of Kogi West recall Senator Dino Melai, do you see this as a new dawn for Nigeria's democracy and the people power to actually hold their lawmakers accountable?
It's a two-edged sword. Because when you say certain people prompted it, there must be certain undertones. And I think those are issues I would not like to discuss here, because there is no smoke without fire. Because why I say it's a double-edged sword is that if, as Dino Melai is claiming, if it's the governor of the state that is fighting him, it means it's showing governors in Nigeria that they can do the same with the lawmakers, and that portends danger for democracy.
All right, still talking about the people and what to gain or lose. Now, with this kind of rancor upheaval between the executive and the legislative arms of government, if this is not nipped in the bud, what do the people stand to gain or lose?
They say where two elephants fight, the grass will suffer. It is governance that will suffer. Look at this brouhaha on Magu. It's a distraction, as far as I'm concerned, to the executive. And one way or the other, the judiciary is now also trying to take its own pound of flesh. Because for once, for the first time, the searchlight is also being beamed on the judiciary. And then, of course, they say one is each other's brother's keeper. And then, of course, because the searchlight is also being beamed on lawyers whose phones are being tapped and who now they allege are bribing judges. And of course, before you become a judge, you're first of all a lawyer. You were a lawyer. I mean, all the judges have classmates today who are lawyers, who are SANs, and so on. So they want to be each other's keepers. And where this will take us, I don't know. But it's worrisome to me as far as I'm concerned. And the bottom line to all of these things is it's the people who suffer for it. The people who have to spend probably 8 hours, 9 hours on the Lagos-Ibadan expressway going to Lagos. The people whose lives are in danger because the bridge collapses between Jeba and Mokwa. They are the people who are suffering for it.
So when are we going to merge? Are Nigerians hope not dimming already?
Well, I always say to my children that I feel sorry for them and their own children. I'm 67. Very soon, if God spares my life another 3 years, I'll be knocking on the gate and saying maybe I'm on my way out. But what's going to become of generations yet unborn, I shudder to think about it.
Chief, let us look at the recent trip of the acting president to London to visit the president, Muhammadu Buhari, on the latter's invitation. What is your interpretation of this? He jetted out yesterday night, promptly spent an hour behind closed doors with the president, back this morning to chair the Federal Executive Council meeting. What's your interpretation of this?
Well, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, but I have a hunch that it could be to rejig the whole process. It could be that the man knows that, okay, he's not, as at now, fit enough to rule Nigeria, and he wants to shed part of that responsibility. It could also even lead to reshufflement in the Federal Executive Council. It could lead to reshufflement in inside the villa. You never know. But since it's at the invitation of Mr. President himself, I think that the next couple of days we should see certain things happening. And I'm sure now that ministers will be running helter-skelter. It's not impossible that some governors themselves will be running helter-skelter who have bypassed the vice president in the past and thought that he was nobody. Now realizing, because Nigerians shift to wherever they believe power is so quickly is unbelievable.
How do you describe a political terrain?
Fragile.
And how can we make it strong?
How fragile?
Okay.
How fragile? Fragile as in fragile? No, because I am on a very serious note. Now, the way our lawmakers are going about their business is worrisome to Nigerians. It's worrisome to me. And having been there, and I am lucky to have been privileged to have been at party level, a player at the national level, and at legislative level, a player in the National Assembly. And it wasn't this bad. There was proper separation of power. I mean, I remember that when President Obasanjo was there on seat, yes, we had our differences with him, but it wasn't on trivial issues like this, and we didn't practically, like it's been done now, attempt to bring down government. Because this is what I see happening. So we just have to appeal to our lawmakers because they're there to represent us for 4 years. Even if in the end we're going to say after 4 years enough is enough. But for now, let them please try to properly knit together this fragile democracy.
Now we have a rule of law, which we will always go back to. And how can this be the veritable tool of resolving and managing the fundamental challenges confronted the nation when it has been disregarded, oftentimes by those who are to uphold it by living and living by it?
It's unfortunate because everybody sees himself as a big man. You will see in developed countries that legislators will always let you know that they are serving the people because they've been voted by the people. In Nigeria, we vote people in to become our bosses. And that's what makes a difference.
All right, if you're just tuning in, it's Citizens Forum on the Daybreak Show this beautiful Wednesday morning. We're looking at the political tension in the country that has been upped once again by the strained relationship between the executive arm of government and the legislative arm of government. We have the studio, Honourable Chief Bode Mustapha from Oaikhenan. Well, before quickly going to break for the national news, Chief, there has been cool rumors talking about the khaki boys warming up for any eventuality. How would you react to this? Do you see this happening with how far we've come?
Well, you see, in Yoruba they say "Ishu eni lo ma ntowo eni bepo." What from all the books we have read, I have read when it concerns coups. Coups just happen. People prompt coups to happen. It's civilians who act or behave in ways that tend to make soldiers come. And I hope we will not push ourselves that far or push our luck too far.
All right, on that note, we'll take a breather here for the national news. After the national news, we will come back and continue our discussions. Honourable Bode Mustapha will still be here in the studio. Stay with us. All right, you're welcome back. It's still Citizens Forum on the Daybreak Show. This beautiful Wednesday morning, the 12th of July, 2017. We still have at the studio Honourable Chief Bode Mustapha. That's our guest this morning, as we look at the strained relationship between the executive arm of government and the legislative arm of government. What does this portend for our democracy and, of course, good governance, service delivery to the people? If you want to be part of our discussions this morning, you can call us via the studio lines 0809-868-7344 and 0909-146-9670. You can also reach us via the short code 32120, or you have to do so type rock, ROCK, there's a space, type your message, include your name, and send to 32120. Hi.
Morning. They get I say good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah, Paula Aghemerio is my name.
All right, thank you.
Just next week, I'm trying to go to you.
I know.
Our politicians, they are very, very economical and appointee of Buhari himself. Do we expect now to overlook all those things? So far, so far in the country, it's all coming from the top. Nobody is saying the truth.
On the Daybreak Show Citizens Forum segment, quickly we have the breaking news for you. Just hold on, we'll be back.
Rock City FM. Breaking news.
Yeah, my name is Honourable Bode Mustapha. I'm calling from the People's Parliament. Let me quickly congratulate my Catholic group for having triumphed.
Let's move on, Honourable Judge.
Yeah, Tobi. The thing now is, I think I would have expected the Senate to really understand that people voted for them. They need to always want to upheld and probably protect the interests of the people. If you leave Shibajo alone to do what he's doing, he's not doing badly. I mean, they should just consider other people so that we can move this country forward. God bless you.
God bless you too. All right, let's stick to the.
Thank you very much. The first caller was asking, where did this government get it wrong? Where did Buhari government get it wrong? I think the answer to that is very simple. At the formation of APC became a conglomeration of several strange bedfellows, if I may say so, just to ensure that Jonathan did not continue because we do not want our country to get more damaged and fragmented and the economy to get worse than it was. And because of that, unfortunately, certain I's were not dotted while certain T's were not crossed. And that is that's the problem we had as a country. But we have to move on and make the best of what we have on hand right now. Now, somebody said, what is the work of senators? That's Mr. Godfrey. Well, senators are meant to make laws for the betterment of Nigerians, and they're meant to be partners with the executive for making laws for the good governance of the electorate, which I think they should do more rather than opening up old laws and trying to tinker with them. I think they should more than ever now, be more creative in creating laws that will possibly make certain existing laws enforceable. so that people can feel the impact of the legislature. Now, Mr. Aghemerio talked about MAGU and DSS. From what I read in the papers, there is a cabal, from what we all read in the papers, in the presidency. And because the cabal, from what, again, I am quoting what I read because I'm not in the villa and I'm not part of the villa. Some people in the cabal know that MAGU will be after them or was after them. And so they wrote intelligence report against him without even getting it through Mr. President. I think that the anti-corruption president that we'll have, if he has access to such proper information that the man was corrupt, he will not have put him forward. So for him to have put him forward not once but twice, it means that the so-called report should not be taken that seriously, or more or less should be taken just for the value of the paper on which it is written. Now, is it possible for federal government to declare state of emergency on the legislature as asked by Mr. Aghemerio? The answer is no, because there are three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. If you say the executive should declare state of emergency, then it means that the same executive can declare state of emergency on the judiciary, wherein then lies the hope of the common man. That is a no-no. Mr. Kinde says, how best can we appeal to legislators for peace to reign? I think the first important thing is we need to strengthen our institutions. Today we have just had breaking news. The Supreme Court has just given a judgment in the case of PDP. One of the arms of government should now approach the Supreme Court and get interpretations to some of these things. And I'm sure that if these things are taken to the Supreme Court, they will give us answers in a jiffy for us to be able to quickly move on. And everybody will know his level and his limitations, and will be able to move on as a country. And should we go back to parliamentary system as asked by Prince Onodeko? My answer to that is a capital yes. It's either that or we go to part-time legislature. Because there is no way this monolithic economy of ours can sustain this presidential system of governance. There's no way. And the last question was from Mr. Shorunke. Will the executive expect fair judgment from the judiciary because of the taint? I believe that even amongst thieves there is honor. There will still be judges who will not want their names or the images tainted. I know some justices of the Supreme Court that are clean as they come. And I believe that whether they expect to get fair judgment or not, that is the last hope that they have if they really want to govern us properly. So they should go to the Supreme Court.
All right, let's quickly add this comment on our Facebook page. This one from Adewa Leshibo Ale says, Chief Mustapha, don't you think the poverty level of our people is making us an easy prey for money politics? Don't you think it would be better if we let people from the grassroots, I mean people performing well at the community level? You want to quickly react to that?
Yes, I agree. But you see, when somebody hasn't eaten for the last 24 hours, and you go to him to speak long English, he will ask you, is that what I'm going to feed on? The poverty level in the country has made it, unfortunately, has made it such that money bags take over the nation. But if our people can emancipate themselves and be ready, because when they come and give you a pot of porridge, you sell your birthright for a pot of porridge. When they give you small money, once you finish spending that money, they have gone and they've taken away your birthright. So if people can if we can talk to our people and educate them more to be ready to starve themselves and shun these people who bring money, or collect the money because it's part of their own patrimony and still do what is right, then in the future people will not carry money around but will serve properly.
Okay.
We got some tweet here too. Quickly running through some of the tweets we have here. This one came from Gafar Olusegun Ismaila. Chief Bode Mustapha is perfectly right. Bicameral legislation is the best. The crop of lawmakers are lawbreakers. And this one came from Ogunjimi Akin Ajani. Chief Bode Mustapha, God Almighty will continue to bless you. These people are just there for their selfish interest. May God help Nigeria. And we got another tweet from Gafar Olusegun Ismaila. I think the Senate President is too ambitious. He ought to have resigned if he's credible with all the allegations. And still from Gafar Olusegun Ismaila, the attitude of our lawmakers is ridiculing our democratic system and insulting the intelligence of informed Nigerians. With all that is happening in Nigeria, we're not right then saying Nigeria is a failed state. Corruption is everywhere. Still taking tweet from Gafar Olusegun Ismaila, Daybreak Show, Sir Chief Bode Mustapha, may God bless you. I agree with your submission. Our lawmakers are becoming reckless. Do you think the nation can survive this political crisis soonest and masses can benefit good governance? That's a question from Gafar Olusegun Ismaila. And this came from Yemi Da Vinci. To topic of discussion, I must salute Honourable Mustapha for his submissions. He remains as erudite as ever. Shame is not our senator. And I, however, think that the executive is not used to having its authority challenged. They should approach the Supreme Court for interpretation. Still coming from Yemi Da Vinci, it's my opinion that one Senate president heard security reports that President Osinbajo was back. That is why he stepped down the motion to be president. And we got this one from Victor Omojola. You never can tell. Ghost workers also collect salaries for Libya and Nigeria. Okay, that's another tweet on some other issues anyway. And then this one came from Bamidele Julius. Please, sir, how and who can get us out of this? The executive, judiciary, or this set of corrupt legislators? And Oluwasheyi Manuel O also tweeted, the greatest political mistake President Muhammadu Buhari made is saying he would work with anybody that emerges as Senate President or Speaker, respectively. And then we have Lawal Ayola. Can't we scrap the National Assembly? May God bless Chief Mustapha. All right, those are the tweets here. And I want to believe, sir, that you've noted the questions.
You want to quickly react?
Yes, can't we scrap the National Assembly? As long as we want to have what we call separation of powers, we cannot scrap the National Assembly. We can only tinker with it. And to me, we have two options, either parliamentary or part-time legislature. You see, the world is now a global village. If you have legislators who will work only for 1 month every quarter and pay them a stipend because it's about service. If you pay them 4 million naira for 1 month, they pay their drivers, they pay their feeding, they feed themselves, they transport themselves. The first reading, on the first day of sitting, they can have the first and second reading of any bill. Even if you have 3, 4, 5, 6 bills, they can all be read same day. And these bills will now be sent to the various committees to work on for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, they bring them back. Even if there are 10 bills, they can be worked on in 2 weeks. And then when they bring them back, you now look at the word by word, the paragraph by paragraph, line by line for 1 week and take it to the executive for assent and let everybody disperse and go back to their houses. And in that way, imagine how much Nigeria will save. So that's an option. The other option is, and you see, in that way also, legislators from their 4 million naira will have to pay. If they want to carry 28, let them take 28 with them. If they want to take 20 legislative legal aid, let them take them. That is their own toro. But then Nigeria is not going to be paying for all of that. So, and in the process, we will save money. And if that happens, it will shock you that, and it should go all the way to local government. That is when you'll see that only people who want to serve are the people who bring themselves out to be voted for.
Emmanuel says,
the greatest political mistake PMA was saying it will work with anybody that emerged as Senate president. I agree with you. It was a mistake he made. He must have made that statement in good faith. Just like he said, I don't belong to anybody and I belong to everybody. But in Nigeria, people take advantage of any loophole in a statement that you make. And I'm sure that if given knowledge with hindsight, he may not even repeat the same thing again. He may insist on working with who. But again, you see, a lot of dirty water will pass under the bridge, and he may not always have his way, especially when you have when you have a Senate that is populated with people who are tainted as we have today. That's the problem.
All right, let's quickly add these messages before we go to the calls.
I think a lot of the people who have tweeted are on the same page. And somebody there said, and agreed with me, that they have to go to the Supreme Court and get interpretation. And once there's an interpretation, we will now strengthen institutions so that no matter who gets there to office tomorrow, whether as president of Nigeria or Senate president, they will know their bounds. They will know their limits in terms of who can they appoint, who can they not appoint, who must be vetted, or who must be cleared by the National Assembly and who should not be cleared by the National Assembly. I think that is what the executive needs to do as soon as possible for us to have sanity in the polity.
All right, let's take more of the calls. 0809-868-7344.
Equally from Basala.
All right, for
Tobi and Aghemerio.
Morning.
And our guests here, I've enjoyed you very much this morning. I want to commend you for your forthrightness. You have played the matter as they are, thorough and thorough. Also, Maggie, that is how the whole issue is. I want to say, why do the acting rage and the people imagine the same thing? Also, I want to say the second set of lawmakers have learned nothing from history. You recently cited the case of Salisu Ibrahim. The speaker then, the old speaker, who went and tendered a letter of resignation on the floor of the National Assembly on that certificate saga. And the present crop of lawmakers, not Nigerians, are they from the mass of move? Why don't they for once realize that Nigeria has never had this so bad? A word is not for the wise. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Very much. I think there's a consensus of opinion in terms of part-time legislature. The challenge we have is that, and that brings a lot of pain to me. If we have seen one single National Assembly member who will sponsor a private member's bill, whether it will fly or not, asking for part-time legislature, it will be a hero, even if it will be defeated. I remember that when I sponsored the Police Security Task Fund bill, I believed that the police was underpaid and the welfare was not good enough, and they killed it because I was not from the majority party. But I had satisfaction. Now that same bill I brought in year 2000, 17 years later, I read yesterday in the newspapers an advert for a public hearing on something similar to that, and it gives me joy. And I think that until the day when we'll have legislators who can be independent-minded and who will have the fear of God, knowing fully well that it's just a big hole being dipped into the pockets of the treasury of this country, then we will have it. We may be able to be on the right path to get it right. I thank everybody who has tweeted in and the people who support, and I think that we all have to keep on shouting and crying about it until it happens, that we either have part-time legislature or we have bicameral legislature.
As we post home, Chief Bode Mustapha, this recent Supreme Court judgment on the PDP, what is your interpretation of what you think will happen, not only to the PDP, but also the government in power, the party in power, the APC?
Well, I don't think it will have any effect on the party in power. I think what's going to happen really is that PDP, before you know it now, you may find that you may find Alimadu Sharif going back to McAfee and saying, I've gone to, just like Yamu said, I've gone out as far as Supreme Court, you have won, I accept your leadership, let's move on, and let's put the past behind us. It's not impossible. And I guess that will most likely be what will happen, unless either of the two parties had is one leg in one of the 5 new parties that I called the 5 leprous fingers on a leper's hand.
All right, so that's our show this morning. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation, Honourable Chief Bode Mustapha. We appreciate your contributions as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all those who called, those who sent messages, those who tweeted, and those who posted on our Facebook page. We appreciate every one of you. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of the show. I am Tobi Joseph. Have a wonderful Wednesday.
I am